1122 King Road. Is it possibly a crime scene that's been manipulated and cleaned prior to the investigators arriving on the scene? Let's talk about it. I'm ARHayes, and this is The Convict's Thoughts. November 13th is just right around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. 1 year from the tragic crime that took place in Moscow, Idaho, that took the lives of 4 beautiful college students: Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Caitlin. It's all being accused on one WSU PhD student, Brian Koberger. Being accused doesn't always mean that the whole story is being told. Many still have questions. I personally have questions as well. 8 hours between the time of a crime where a surviving roommate was an eyewitness, and in a recently released book describes what she heard transpiring above her and around her during the crime. It doesn't make you look better when it's documented within a book that you heard the crime and didn't do much more than step out of your room to yell for them to be quiet. It's written based off of interviews directly from the surviving roommate's father, who I guess has built somewhat of a bond with the author. So a little more information came out in regards to that many may not know. Like myself, I don't know the truth behind it all. I can only go based off my theories, my opinions, my thoughts, my heart, my gut feelings, just like many out there. Is she being honest? Is she creditable? Was she in stage shock? Who knows? Who really knows what transpired that night? But the question is it possible to manipulate and clean a crime scene as graphic as that home had to have been after a crime like this? You're talking about split levels, numerous actual victims spread out in distant parts of the home, wood flooring, where we hear directly from the coroner's own statement, the prosecuting attorney's own statement, this is possibly one of the most graphic and bloody crime scenes possibly ever seen. We know they removed walls, flooring, different parts of the home had to come out because that's all blood evidence. It had to have been graphic. It had to have been. If you just think about the style of crime and the way that Dylan Mortensen made the statements within this new said book, that it was as if they were torn apart with this knife. Not only just puncture wounds and stabs, they were torn apart graphically by this type of knife. Now, obviously, it doesn't make any mention that she knows what type of knife is used. She most likely did not see that, and if she did, she's not going to tell us. That would only incriminate herself. But let's talk about the PCA, the probable cause affidavit, the theory-based affidavit used to garner an arrest of the suspect, clearly makes an odd statement in regards to one latent shoe print directly in front of the surviving roommate, Dylan Mortensen's door. That comes across as odd to me. Look, I've been in a lot of crime scenes. I've committed some stupid crimes. I've left evidence behind that got me convicted, and let me tell you, footprints go a long way. Whether I mean, whether it's blood, whether it's dirt, whether it's some sort of substance that leaves behind a footprint, it's pretty good evidence. Now, I can't say in my cases that I've left behind a single footprint, and my footprint was not latent. Now, for those of you out there that don't fully grasp what the word latent means, it means there is a print, it's just not visual to the naked eye on the first glance. And I hope you guys don't mind. I have my sidekick tonight, Xander, who would like to possibly investigate this as well with me and discuss it because he thinks it's very important information as well. Don't you, Xander? That's correct. Good boy. So, a single footprint. I wouldn't think someone committing a crime of this nature would be hopping through the crime scene on 1 foot. I don't see it. To leave a single footprint, could that possibly mean only one of your feet, one of your shoes just happened to step in blood, but the other one did not? That doesn't sound plausible by how this crime scene is described. You have to figure the floor of a situation like this while someone's being attacked and the struggles are transpiring, because I personally do not believe everybody stayed within their beds during this attack. I know many have claimed that they were all caught off guard and they were asleep when this happened. I don't personally feel that way, because if that were the case, the assumption based off of what I gather of the sayings of the prosecuting attorney, the coroner, and the different people that talked about the actual crime scene, blood was across the walls. They removed floor paneling. Okay, so let's think about that. If you have to remove floor paneling and pieces of the wall, that means the blood was widespread. Widespread. And it would be in the stabbing and the slashing and the tearing. It's not going to just pool into a single place. Meaning, as this individual or individuals that committed this crime maneuvered their way throughout the crime scene, their feet would be in and out of blood. And it would not be latent prints left behind. You would be leaving footprints. A cleanup of a crime scene like this is impossible to get done in a perfect manner. You cannot get all of this evidence removed from a crime scene. I don't care if you even had 8 hours to be able to do it. If you're not a professional cleaner with professional equipment and the chemicals and the necessary things to do this type of cleanup, you can't make it perfect. And that's why even now it's being deemed that this crime scene isn't even safe enough for jurors to walk through. So we know it's not a cleaned up scene. It's just not. I've heard the many discussions about how perfectly cleaned up this scene was, and it's not. Now, could you remove footprints? Sure, you could. If you knew, the areas that you wanted to get said footprints out of, if it was on just the single floor in a small area, sure, I believe you could remove footprints. You could remove probably things that maybe you touched with your hands and put a bloody handprint on the wall. Yes, I believe you could do that. If you knew what you were looking for, where it was, and you also, in a scenario like that, don't want to take all the evidence out because you don't want to make it seem so obvious that you have done so. The chemicals necessary to do it, the bleaches, the hand rags, the mops, I mean, the chemicals would be noticeable no matter what you did. They would know chemicals had been used. But could you get rid of a mop, hand towels, cleaning supplies, even your own clothing and your own shoes that were used while you were cleaning the scene? Yeah, you could. You could. As long as whatever vehicle or whatever manner that left in wasn't found or seen relatively close to the time of the cleanup, because it will leave some evidence in there, including smells and various things of that nature. So you're going to have to be very careful with that as well. Obviously, if you're going to do a cleanup, multi-people involvement would go a long way in making it much easier to do it compared to just a single individual in a short period of time. Let's say, like the suspect, there's no possible way in the time frame that he had to commit this crime that he could even focus remotely at all on any type of cleanup. He can't dust his prints. He can't make sure he didn't touch something. He can't worry about his footprints and how to get them out of the scene. He's just got to get the crime done and get to moving. But if you add a few more people and much more time, yes, it could be done. You're talking about 8 hours. 8 hours. I remember watching a content creator put up a ticking time clock just on the said 15 minutes of how long that felt and what could be accomplished in that time frame. I've never been one that fully agreed that this type of crime could happen in 7 minutes. I'm not that person. I'm not the one that feels like it could be done. And I've been very direct and very strong within my opinion on that when I share it. I do not believe 7 minutes or a time frame of 4:04 a.m. to 4:20 a.m., the totality of 16 minutes, I don't agree that it could be done. I know what it takes to get in and out of homes, and it's not as quick and as easy as what everybody is deeming it to be. And now you're even adding a 4-victim homicide to it with the capability of driving to the scene, getting away from the scene, and what we're going to do that with only leaving a single latent footprint? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't. Let's talk about real quick just the processing by crime scene investigators of the 1122 King Road home. I have a slight problem when I see the fact, did they even process the back sliding door? Was it roped off for days and fully investigated? Did they pull every print? Did they look for blood driplets? Did they really secure that back door, considering that's the way they've been told the suspect left the home after committing the bloody crime? Why was that not taped off? Why was that not completely contained? Instead, garbage is just laying around. The door is obviously been closed. And then, just hours later, there's stools put in the door so it can't be opened. I don't see anything about that shows me that they actually did much processing of that door. But then I've seen other video and other pictures of them all over the window just outside of the front door on the right-hand side as you face the entry. They're all over that window of the empty bedroom. They're all over the back window, whether it be Dylan's window or it could possibly be the kitchen window. They're all over investigating that. But the said exit is the back sliding door, and I don't see any evidence of them actually taking that seriously and processing it. Sure, I mean, I've seen the photographs like many, and then we watched, the newscasts of the investigators walking around the home. They have the dogs. They're digging in the dirt. They're looking like they're looking for evidence. And maybe they found some. I don't know. We won't know. We won't know that until we get to trial. But it just seems odd to watch the actual way that people were processing the home, because when we look through, the different photos, we see them definitely processing the kitchen. So if none of the crime happened in the kitchen, what are they processing in the kitchen? What are they looking for? Do they feel as though the defendant had enough time to stop for a minute, have a glass of milk with a couple of cookies on his way either out the door or maybe even to the next room? He just had some extra time to hang out in the kitchen. Are they trying to process of who might have been eating in the kitchen prior to this happening and maybe try to determine a time? To me, it looked like they were actually processing evidence within the kitchen, which tells me blood. Could a part of this attack began in the kitchen? Was one of the actual people attacked beginning in the kitchen? They spent a lot of time, it seems, in the upstairs living room by the good vibes sign. Meaning that there has to be evidence in that area, either of the suspect or suspects leaving the home, because we know that's a solid flooring, not carpeted. So there's probably quite a few blood drops and various blood evidence throughout that as well. Could there be more shoe prints that we just don't know about? We don't know. But why in the PCA only one actual made statement when it comes to any type of evidence like a footprint, handprint, anything, and we hear of one latent shoe print? Doesn't sound right to me. But let's also think about the fact, as you maneuver your way through this home and you're bringing a said weapon with you, that leaves evidence throughout the entirety of the route taken within the home. What route was taken? Was there blood over by the stairwell that goes down the stairs towards where the second roommate was possibly sleeping? Is there, blood splatter in places that show he actually cased the house looking for other maybe survivors? And that would tell us a lot. If he was actually looking for other people that were alive, then we know it was probably the house that was targeted, which is what law enforcement made a very clear statement at the beginning and then toggled back and forth. It was the house that was targeted. Then it became the occupants of the home were targeted, and then it even snookered back a little bit back to the house was targeted. We don't know, but a lot of this key evidence is going to give us that fact. And we have just recently been told that the FBI were back in the home doing another new stepped up type of evidentiary gathering through equipment that they didn't have last year prior to this all, going to possible trial on a speedy trial, when they claim they did a bunch of different types of scans and things of the home, but now they just recently went back in, and I have a problem with that as well, because now you're doing evidence of a home that's gutted. It's not the same home. How do you have enough through a changed home to show the jurors what could have possibly happened that night when it's not the same? It's not the same home. You just have to literally think you're going to be taken to trial with your life on the line in a death penalty case, and instead of them showing the home that you possibly committed the crime in, now they're going to show the house up the street because it's similar to the home that you committed the crime was in. What would have happened if we tore this said home down when everybody was okay with that factor? We wouldn't have needed this new said evidence that you're going in to gather. You wouldn't need these exhibits and displays that you now claim that you are making at this time. Or do you think maybe the pressure got put onto these investigators and onto the FBI that their evidence actually is weak? That it is exactly what the defense counsel stated in their motion to dismiss. The lack of evidence is rummaging through people's minds. So you better scurry and get your butt over there and get some more evidence. So now here comes the work. I wonder if now they've actually gone through the trash that sat outside the back door forever untouched. Which I would think that evidence would somewhat be important, considering Xana's father made the statement that they were home at approximately 12 p.m. eating pizza when another said witness has them at the fraternity house at a party until 1:45 a.m. And then DoorDash was again ordered and delivered approximately 4 a.m. when they possibly just finished their actual pizza just hours before. I would have thought maybe that would have been a key piece of evidence just to try and build a timeline. Unless, maybe that timeline really is built based upon the digital forensics that they got from the phones in the home, and they just don't need anything more. They got it. They got it. They found that sheath, and they've got the digital text messaging and things on the phone. So now no more evidence is needed, but they documented a latent shoe print. One. Uno. Not dos. Not two. One. Somebody make it seem right, but do you think multiple people could have possibly been involved to the point that after the crime was committed, they stayed behind to, what would they be cleaning up? What would they be cleaning up? Their own footprints, possibly? But that would disturb the way the evidence of the totality of the home flowed, and it wouldn't make any sense. But then you've got to ask yourself, are these investigators intelligent enough to get up over the hump and know that a crime scene that they're looking at has been changed or manipulated? Because they may just rack it up to how many of the kids that were called over prior to the 911 call that entered the home and found the bodies, how many of them trampled through that home, disturbing it completely, meaning that every piece of actual evidence on the floor itself, like footprints, would now be unusable because you would have tracks going everywhere from these kids, completely changing the makeup of what the evidence would have been if 911 had been called immediately and the extra footprints were not in the home. So that's my point here, ladies and gentlemen. If I have to give my overall opinion, and trust me, many of you already know that my opinion is this is not a single perp crime. I do feel like more people are involved. I do have hesitancy and issues with the fact that the surviving roommates did not call 911. I have tied people to not only them, but also others that are very close proximity of that home that could have reason to be a part of a crime against not only targeting the home, but actually the people within it. So, with that being said, do I feel as though a major cleanup of this home transpired? No, I do not. But what I do feel is the home's outseen evidence had been changed enough and disturbed enough, pretty much contaminated scene, by all said people within the home prior to 911 being called, I don't think that it was going to be able to be processed correctly. Now, do I think they failed? Yeah, absolutely. I think the investigators absolutely failed within their actual processing of the crime scene. When you don't even look in the trash that's sitting right outside the back door, there's problems. You show it. You show it when you pick up a black jacket just around the corner that's on a fire hydrant and don't even do any type of processing of it. You have no idea whose jacket that is. You have no idea who wore that jacket. You don't know where that jacket came from. Instead of doing any due diligence, you just threw it right back directly on the ground. Evidence in this case has been poorly taken care of. Look at the officers for the search warrant of the WSU apartment of Brian Koberger that didn't even get evidence to the evidentiary lockup for over 10 days. It's a pretty bad sign. It's a bad sign. So that's my view, ladies and gentlemen. No, I do not feel it was an 8-hour full-out cleanup of the home. Could there have possibly been a few footprints here or there removed? Maybe. But I think the major issue within the evidence of the home will be contamination by the people in the home before 911 was called. Causes an issue. Causes a major issue in my mind, and I hope those who legitimately keep an open mind looking at this crime scene would know that is a problem. Again, I'm ARHayes, Convict's Thoughts. We'll talk again soon. Idaho 4 tragedy, ladies and gentlemen. 1-year anniversary just around the corner. Let's all keep them in our prayers and look to the sky and send them blessings and love. Have a great evening.